Greetings, old school magic players, and welcome to the Four Horsemen. Greetings, old school magic players. Welcome to the Four Horsemen. It's Monday night, September 30th. We are doing some Tournament 15 top 8 quarterfinals deck reviews tonight. I'm joined here with a couple of our longtime Four Horsemen supporters and players. Four Horsemen, oldschoolmagic.com. Check us out. We focus on the original expansions of Magic the Gathering, and we are going to be diving into Tournament 15, top 8. JS, are you there?
Yeah, what's up, guys?
Welcome. John, are you with me?
Hello.
Greetings, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We haven't gotten to do a lot of these top 8 deck review videos. They're you want to get a quorum and you want to get some interesting commentary going on. And tonight we've got John and JS to do that. Everybody's probably seen these great prizes that were given out for the tournament. And hats off to John for making all of these. The players really love them. And if you want to get some of these great prizes, just join us for any of our tournaments. You can join us at fourhorsemenmagic.com. We are in the quarterfinals, and we've released the top 8. This is the second to last week of Tournament 15. And here's a breakdown of the brackets. Everybody here, except for John, was in top... No, John, you were in top 16 too. We were all in top 16. John didn't make it. It's one of the first times he hasn't made it to the semifinal or quarterfinals brackets. And JS, you got close, but also didn't make it out of the top 16.
I ran out this time.
You ran out of gas.
Yeah.
And John, you got a 2-0 sweep. That's a rare occurrence in Four Horsemen for you.
Yeah, I got a little screwed 2 games in a row, but it happens.
It happens. So on the right, these are the top 8 quarterfinalists. And we've all seen the deck photos here. We've published them on the Discord and the Facebook group and on the website. If you want to check out the deck photos, just go to fourhorsemenmagic.com/tournament15, and you'll see all these deck photos listed there. And we're going to go through these today. Lucas Santos is facing off against Isaaco Bettini. Tim Kincaid is facing off versus Peter Soltes. I'm going to be facing off versus Christopher Zach. And Terry Philip Hutchins is facing off versus John DeProse. Okay, so the first couple of decks we're going to look at is Lucas versus Isaaco. All right, this is Lucas's deck. JS and John, what do you guys think of this ATOG Robots Lightning Brew?
I'm gonna let John start, but I face Lucas, and I'm gonna give you my impress after.
Oh, good. Well, I played Isaaco, so this is interesting that you get to talk about the deck you faced, and then I'll get to talk about the deck I faced. But
Okay.
I love Red Deck. I'm a big fan of the color, and so it's neat to see somebody trying to do, a different spin on it. We've seen basically all levels of red now, I think, across all of the tournaments. We've seen, kind of aggro red and big red and Tron red, and this kind of falls someplace in the middle. He's certainly playing, the staples like ball lightning and chain lightning and pyrotechnics, but he's also trying to scale it up a little, like with the rook eggs and the fissures. Fissure is expensive, but it's really good in this format. It does pretty much kill anything, and it's an instant, so that's solid. And then, of course, the robots at the top of the curve that everybody else is playing too.
But not 4 of each of them. I thought that's interesting, right? Only 3 Triskelions, not 4. 2 Clockworks, not 4. 2 Dancing Scimitars instead of extra Clockworks or Triskelions. That's a very interesting choice.
Yeah, it kind of smooths the curve out because then it gives him some 4 drops instead of a 5. He's got some 4 drops, some 5 drops, some 6 drops. There's not, you do see some 4-0s here in the dominant red cards, but almost everything else he's shaved a copy or 2 off.
Yeah. Yeah, other interesting cards, a single desert. Usually, if you're going to run desert, you want to run a bunch of them. Just one solitary desert. The two Tetravis as well, right? He's got the 2 Tetravis to fill out for more flying robots, and then a couple of rook eggs for ground blocking or chain lightning and switching them into rook tokens.
And don't forget about gas from ATOG for ATOG.
Well, that's what this whole deck is about, right? This is we haven't seen a lot of ATOG builds, but we have seen a few attempts over the last couple of years.
And I think it's the first one that really, worked and being very efficient.
Yeah.
But I was surprised to just see one Blood Moon main deck.
Yeah, one Blood Moon main deck. There's 2 more in the sideboard, but only one main.
Because I think for myself, when I played him, I got the first game. I had played Amnesia. I just, you had no answer afterwards, and I got the first game. And after the next 2 games, he brought all the Blood Moon, and it was super tough to handle, and I wasn't able to get back from that. So I think playing Blood Moon main decks, maybe 3 of them already. God damn, it just dropped maybe the desert and maybe 1 pyro, and I played the 3 Blood Moon main deck. God damn, good luck.
Yeah, and John, you're a big red fan. The 4-ball lightnings, those guys can be very sneaky. The 2 bloodlust, bloodlust is a card that it can be used in so many ways. Like if an opponent has an Urnum Djinn and you have a smaller creature like the ATOG or even something like your Mishra's Factory as a 3/3, you can put the Bloodlust on a Juzum Djinn or an Urnum Djinn and their defense becomes a 1. So it's very powerful as an offense to get in that early damage, but it also can take down a big heavy duty blocker with a big defense.
Yeah, that's true. Or you can, hit it with the Bloodlust and then ping it with a trike counter or whatever.
Ping it with a trike.
It doesn't work as good with Desert because you'd be giving them the extra buff before, you kill it with the Desert. So that's kind of a non-bow there. And I think you're right, Chad. I don't really understand, like, the 1 Desert. I don't really know what that kills. I guess it's good against, maybe, like, Tundra Wolves or something in your red-white deck, but even that deck it's not really good against because they also play Brassman, and it's not good against Brassman. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I would like to see more. If he's going to run Desert, I'd like to see him, Lucas, hone in on that strategy a little bit. But given that Ball Lightning costs the triple red, I understand why maybe he'd be a little reluctant to do that. So, he's got what? Is that 18 mountains there? So there's definitely room for 1 or 2 more deserts, and that could be useful since you're playing robots and you don't have any other color.
Or just don't play desert at all.
Or leave the desert out, yeah. But I do kind of like the idea of desert. I just think that if you're going to play it, you should lean into that strategy more. What do you guys think about his cycle?
Add another Jalum Tome.
Yeah, double Jaloon Tome to draw more, right? Once he gets past, 5 lands, he doesn't need any other lands in his deck. So he could double down on Jaloon Tome to draw more, but also Jaloon Tome is more, it's more long game, and he's trying to kill him fast, right?
And I really like the 3 Mountain Yeti and the 2 Detonate.
In the sideboard, right?
In his sideboard, yeah.
Yeah, so if we look at his sideboard, going from left to right, he's got Triskelion, 2 Blood Moons, another Rook Egg, 2 Detonates, 1 Wall of Heat, a couple of Brassman. One of them is the Brassman proxy that John made, 3 mountain yetis, and 4 active volcanoes. What do you guys think about that sideboard?
I don't know. I think it's always like kind of interesting when there's more copies of cards that you already have in your main deck and your board. I don't love it as a strategy. I usually only do it in like 40 card formats where I'm like limited, and so like in U40 for example, they've got a singleton sideboard, and so like maybe I'll play one side and one main of like a hate card or something like that. But I don't know, like, do you ever just like not want the 4th trike? And if the 4th trike is good, do you not just like want it in your main board? Like, what deck do you bring the 4th trike in against? I don't know.
And maybe adding an Inferno or Eternal Flame, something like that, if you hit the Blood Moon. Could be interesting too, as a finisher.
I like Eternal Flame as a finisher, especially as a 1-of in a deck like this where you have a ton of mountains. It's pretty good. I mean, you can really dome somebody for a lot out of nowhere. I mean, certainly you have to be a little bit ahead, but that's pretty easy when you've got all of these little guys to get in and, all these burn spells. And suddenly you can just, dome somebody for 10 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but in general, it's a very nice deck, to be honest.
Oh yeah, and that's a caveat we should always make. This is by no means a harsh, negative critique of any of these decks, but there's always room for improvement. Small tweaks can make a huge difference.
Always.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes somebody makes a choice that he's not here to talk about his deck. There might be perfectly valid reasons for some of these choices that he's making. Like I listened to some of the early videos, real early on, where Chad and Brian were commentating, and like they'd be commentating on one of my matches, and they'd be like, "I just don't understand what's going on." It's like, yeah, because you can't see my fucking hand. Like if you knew what cards I had or whatever, like it makes sense, like the strategy that I'm setting up. But like the same thing with this Jalen Tome. JS made kind of an interesting comment. Do you go 1 or do you go 2? And like, I don't know. I've tried it both ways, and I'm really torn. Like, it's kind of cool that you can cast stuff of Workshop early, but also you can't then use Workshop mana to activate it. So,
yeah,
and sometimes it's good to get 2 tomes out and really like start digging like crazy if you need a certain card or whatever, and cycling through if you're hitting the land pocket or whatever. But this deck, like you said, Chad, doesn't necessarily want to be doing that. It wants to just be slamming threats. So I don't really know. I mean, I don't think it's incorrect to play the card. I think that Sylvan Library might be the best card in the format. And if you can't play Sylvan Library, you play Jalen Tome, right? So like most decks should have 1, but maybe 2. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. The strategy is very aggro and aggressive. So the things I was counting, he's playing 4 ATOG, and you have like 11 artifacts or 12 if you switch Mishra Factory as an artifact and sack it. So is it enough? That's maybe the question I will tell Lucas.
Is there only 3 Fellwar stones there?
Yeah, 3 Fellwar.
Like, I think I'd rather just have the 4th Fellwar stone over that desert so that you have an extra ramp for all these 4, 5, and 6 drops, and then also an extra artifact to sack to ATOG.
Yes, but, sacking the artifacts to ATOG, I agree with that. And if you look at his other creature base, I understand Chain Lightning with Rook Egg is a really powerful combo, but one card he's not running that I was running is Falling Star, and Falling Star is even more powerful than Chain Lightning. It's only 2 more mana, and they're both sorceries, and they deal the same amount of damage, where Falling Star taps the creatures and deals 3 damage to them, and you can deal damage to multiples. If you're going to run Rook Egg, I think you got to run Falling Star. And if you're not going to run Falling Star, then I don't know, you're going to be using your Chain Lightnings on your opponent's creatures, and you got to have like the double red. And what I've seen is Rook Egg is slow. You got to get to 4 mana to get it out, and you usually got to tap out to play it, on turn 3 or 4 if you get a Fellwar Stone, whatever. And then, you got to Chain Lightning it and then bounce the chain. Like, it's very slow and combo-y. And you get the 4/4 Rook token, which is great. But, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem to fit the speed and the focus of, like, I named this thing ATOG Robots Lightning, right? This thing is trying to get there real fast. So I kind of wonder if, like, it would be better to be focusing on either getting rid of the rook eggs and doubling down on your ATOG strategy, or doubling down on the ability to wipe the board with Falling Star and trigger your rook tokens.
I mean, he might just not have any falling. Like, I don't know if there's any proxies in here or not, but like,
Yeah, the workshop is a proxy for sure.
Is it? Okay, because I was gonna say he maybe just doesn't have falling stars. Like, I know some players just don't like to play with.
Right, and that may be the reason.
What they have on hand or whatever. But falling star is a great card, and it should definitely show up here. I agree with you about rook egg. I think it's slow a lot of times, and I also just I don't know. Like, I think part of the problem that's no fault at all of Lucas's is just the card pool. Like, there's no other good, like, 2-drop to put into this deck. If there was one, he'd be playing it. But what would you play? I mean, I guess he could have Brassmen at 1. He could be playing, like, 4 Brassmen if he wanted earlier drops. But
Yeah.
Turn to a dog.
Yeah, and you could do that. The one Blood Moon doesn't seem to be worth it to me. So, if I were to make some changes right away, I would take out that one Blood Moon and those 2 rook eggs, and maybe sideboard that Blood Moon to have 3 in the sideboard, and put in those Brassman, because if you get a Brassman on turn 1, you're gonna get in for the 1 damage on turn 2. 99.9% of the time, it's that 1 extra point of damage, and you can Bloodlust him on turn 3, and then you can sack him to the ATOG. So the Brassman is really, really good with ATOG.
And it's a really good blocker as well.
Right? Sorry, Jay.
Yeah, I said he's a very good blocker as well. You can block early graders, for example.
Or factory. Early factory is the main thing.
Early factory too.
Yeah.
So I think it's better than it's looked like.
Yeah. What John and I have seen is it doesn't matter what deck you're running in Four Horsemen. If your opponent plays a first turn Mistress Factory, you're like, oh shit. Because you're going to be taking a ton of damage until you can deal with that little bastard. Okay, well, I think this has been a good review of Lucas's deck. Before we move on, let's just do each of us. What changes would you make? JS, let's start with you because you played him.
To be honest, I think you're right. Maybe to sideboard Blood Moon or play all 3 in main board and main deck.
Yeah, you don't need to go all in on Blood Moon or not at all. And what we've seen is there's so many good robot artifacts in Four Horsemen that Blood Moon's only good for dealing with utility lands. It's not going to stop your opponent in their creatures.
And personally, I would switch to Wreck for 2 other Dancing Scimitar maybe, because it's so cheap to cast and so effective. You can block a lot of things, especially Urnum and Azer Drake, Serendip Freaked, and many other cards, and even the Rook token. So I think it's a very good card, and you can sack it to the ATOG.
All right. Any other changes?
Adding 1 follower except of the desert, I think you were right too. So maybe I always like to play 2 Jellemtown to be sure to get sometimes more drawing stuff.
Yep.
Because sometimes you're just running out of solution, and if you don't play Sylvan Library, you need to get some response at a certain point.
Yeah.
But it's a really good deck. I've been crushed on the 2 last games of my matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Lucas is undefeated. He hasn't lost. He didn't lose any matches in his group pods. He blew through the. He lost 1 game in top 16 to UJS. So you're actually the only person I think to really beat him in one of the games. So this deck is very, very strong. It's performed very well.
Yep.
And Lucas is also a new player to Four Horsemen. He's only played, I think, in 2 of our events. So this is his 3rd event. And he told me that he found us on YouTube, which is
Well, I think he play it well too.
yeah. He's a solid player. And what were you saying, John?
I love that he saw the videos, and also same thing with his opponent, Isaaco. He is new, and he just came in and is in the top 8 now, which I think is really cool.
Brewed a fantastic deck, yeah. So that's a great segue to Isaaco's deck. So Isaaco Patini.
So the last thing I'll say about that last deck, though, so I would probably cut all those 3 cards up in the top corner, like we talked about. Like, I don't think the Diamond Valley is very good. I know it works with Rook Egg, but like, it's not really playing into your plan of kill your opponent quickly. I don't think the life gain is that important for him. So like, I would probably cut that in the Desert and the Blood Moon, add another Felwar Stone, maybe cut the Rook Eggs, and then the card that I realized he's not playing that he should be playing is Yidwin Ifrit.
Yeah.
Like, that thing is a 3/6 for 3. It's so hard to kill, and it's a pretty relentless beater. I think that belongs in this deck for sure if you're going to go mono red.
And replaced by Rook Egg, yeah, it's very good. Smart move.
Yeah, and I'll just flash. I'll flash Yidwin Ifrit for the viewers here. Yidwin Ifrit is a card we've seen this pop up in some of the other old school formats. It's a 3/6 for 3 red, and whenever the Yidwin Ifrit blocks, you flip a coin. If you lose the coin flip, then you remove Yidwin Ifrit from combat, and it cannot block that turn. And then creatures it was blocking, that it had blocked, only by that creature become unblocked. So it's a 3/6 for 3 mana that you're never going to be blocking with it anyways. You're just going to want to attack every turn. And you can get it out on turn 3, possibly, and it's just a powerhouse. So that's a really good comment there, John, that, it comes out earlier than Rook Egg, and it lends more to the aggro strategy. And so I think that would be a great addition to this deck. Okay.
For sure.
On to Isaaco Patini's deck. Isaaco is, as John mentioned, he's brand new to Four Horsemen. This is his first event, and he's all the way in top 8. He crushed it in his group. I think he was undefeated in his group, which was one of the Europods. And he just rocked it with this black, blue, red aggro deck. And I didn't know what to call this thing. I just named it Unstable Raider, Dibs, and Jins.
We should have people submit deck names when they submit their photos. JS, go ahead and talk about this first, and then I'll talk about how it destroyed me.
Man, to be honest, when I saw it, and I was, God damn, that's a nice deck. And the only, I think, I don't know the result versus Lucas, but for sure the Blood Moon is a really threat for him. I think he have like 4 or 5 basic land. So, and it's playing a couple 2-color blue cards. It's always, but I was just watching. Okay, no, it's okay. It's Volcanic Island. Yeah, it's pretty strong, pretty straightforward, but if someone playing King Suleiman could have problem with all his Ifrit and Jinn. But yeah, it's a very sideboard playing 3 tries sideboard. That's interesting. 2 ashes, 3 Scimitar. Playing Relic Barrier, 3 of them. But I think it's maybe the only thing maybe I will have made different is playing maybe the 4th Oubliette instead of 3 Boomerang.
Yeah. Okay.
But in general, it's a very cool deck. Unstable. And is he playing Diamond Valley?
No Diamond Valley.
Could be interesting to play in that deck. But if the Serendip is making and the Jusem, he's gonna lose 1 damage per turn. So it could be painful.
Yeah. The Spirit Link for Jusem or Serendib is absolutely wrecking this deck, and he probably didn't run into that. But having the boomerangs and the Diamond Valley, if you were, given that that Spirit Link is a thing, it's a wise thing to maybe sideboard that Diamond Valley and sideboard those boomerangs.
Yeah, and maybe I don't know if it could be too complicated, but at the same time he's playing 2-color cards. But maybe combat witches instead of your Urg Riders. I know that Urg Riders is very strong attacker at the beginning of the game, but I prefer combat witches in my opinion. They are a good blocker, and you're not forced to attack. Well, it's my personal opinion.
Yeah, the double black can be tricky, especially considering he's running 4 volcanics, but he is running 4 undergrounds.
3 City of Brass.
He's running 4 badlands. He only needs double black for the oubliettes and the Jusums, so I kind of like the Urg Raiders here. You know, he can play a turn 1 Flying Man, he can play a turn 2 Raiders, and he can play a turn 3 Serendib and a turn 4 Jusum. It just ramps out really nice. And meanwhile, he's got, you know, Chain Lightnings and Unstable Mutations to complement everything.
But it's clearly one of I think the greatest deck in that tournament.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But just not sure about the Relic Barrier, but don't know. Maybe he had an idea behind putting 3 of them, but
I would much rather see Artifact Blast than Relic Barrier there.
Good point. Yeah, Artifact Blast, it's always just 1 red. It's a really cool card.
Yeah.
But it's a really good deck.
Yeah, really good. Okay, John, what do you think?
I got flattened by this deck. It's interesting. This is another deck that, just like the other deck that we just looked at, there's trikes in the sideboard, but I think this deck does it right. It kind of does it the appropriate way. Like, he doesn't have 6 drafts in his main board at all, but then he does have access to them if he wants to bring them in against certain decks. And so you can kind of upscale the deck, you know, take out some of the smaller guys, bring in some more stuff. And he's got 3 scimitars to bring in too. So, like, he's conscious of the fact that there might be some flying out there that he needs to block. There might be some decks that Trike is really good against. He's got 2 each of the 2 hate cards in the sideboard, the Flash Floods and the Active Volcanoes. Those are great. I agree with you guys. I'm not sure what the Relic Barriers are for, but I mean, there is a lot of robots, and I mean, if you can just like tap their Clockwork Avian every turn or tap their Trike every turn, it might, I don't know, that's pretty good. I just don't know specifically if you want to bring 3 of those in for any of the cards that are in the main board, because, you know, you really are going to dilute this. Anytime you side any of this out, you're going to dilute the strategy that you're going for. And, you know, like you guys mentioned, his worst enemy is going to be Spirit Link. Like, his entire strategy is to, like, play an early guy and then, like, pump it or whatever. And Spirit Link just shuts that off. It'll shut off a Flying Man with an Unstable. It'll shut off an Ifrit and gain them life every turn. It'll shut off a Juice and gain them life every turn. I mean, he does have the boomerangs, so, like, he might be able to kind of finagle it and boomerang a Spirit Link and get in for damage again and, you know, kind of out-tempo them. It's certainly what he did with me, because I stumbled on mana. I've been playing basically a mono blue deck for the last several tournaments. In this tournament, I decided to splash white, which was really helpful against the one combo deck that I played against, that I was able to, you know, slam a Presence of the Master and shut their deck off and then just play my stuff and kill them. But the consequence of that was that I kept a hand that only had 1 blue, thinking, sure, I'll draw into another blue, no big deal, because most of my lands are blue, and I never drew a second blue game 1. And it just, I had all the cards that I needed. You know, I had 2 boomerangs in my hand. I could have really disrupted his board and then stabilized and got back in it, but never drew a second blue and wasn't able to do it. And then game 2, same thing. I stumbled on mana again, and while I'm stumbling, he's just jamming something every turn. You know, he's jamming a Flying Man, he's jamming an Air Grader, he's jamming a pump spell on it, he's Chain Lightning aiming, he's Bloodlusting, he's, you know, if I play a creature, he oubliettes it, you know, and he had the 1 of mana drain, like, at a critical moment to get me. And, like, it just was like, the way it lined up, he had every answer every time he needed it for everything that I was actually able to do, which wasn't much. It was a very quick match. I think it was like 20 minutes. And it's funny because when you go like 3-0 in your pod with no problem at all. And then you just play a deck and you're like, oh, well, maybe my deck's not geared to, maybe it's just not good enough to beat this matchup, because we've kind of gravitated away from aggro because the meta itself has gravitated away from aggro. And there are decks out there that will absolutely wreck this deck. But if he doesn't play against them, this is the rock, paper, scissors of Magic. Like, there have been a couple really good aggro decks in this tournament that have just crushed face and haven't run into anything that's been a big problem for them, and he might be able to just go all the way.
Yeah, and we'd love to see it too, because control decks are really taking over, and it's not fun to play against them, and it's not much fun to play them either. So I'd love to see Isaaco go all the way with this deck to the finals.
Personally, I will. It's a kind of deck I'll maybe try once.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about what could we do to if you were to brew this for tournament 17 or something. What tweaks and improvements would you guys want to make to this deck?
You thought about Artifact Blast. I think that's a very good card to have, maybe.
Well,
Fisher.
Artifact Blast is good against weenies. His only weenies really are the Flying Men and the Urg Raiders. Triskelion doesn't do much. Or sorry, you're worried about Triskelion for Artifact Blast, in my mind, and Clockwork Avian and Chetravis, right? That's really what you're going to be saving those spells for, but primarily for Triskelion. And he's not particularly vulnerable to Triskelion, other than he loses some of his small dudes. But by the time your opponent can play Triskelion, he's already gotten in a lot of damage with them anyway.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with this build or this strategy.
No.
I do think it has weaknesses. I think Spirit Link is a big weakness, and I think Blood Moon could really if he gets that Singleton Blood Moon dropped against him in his match early, it's going to shut him off.
Yeah, that's right. And you know what? Isaaco was new to the group, and he was messaging me, and he sent me some early drafts of this deck and asked me what I thought, and I cautioned him on that in particular. I said, look, I love this deck. No one's really kind of done this red, black, blue in quite this way yet. It's very, very cool. And I said, but if you get matched up against a red deck that has Blood Moon, I said you are going to get slaughtered, and you cannot be too greedy on your mana base. And I said, what you need to do is you need to run at least 4, preferably 5 blue lands, and you need to run 4 of the active volcanoes in your sideboard so that you can deal with Blood Moon. And he was like, yeah. And he kind of he halfway listened, right? He ran 3 basic islands and 2 volcanic.
He does have 5 basics, so I mean it is foreseeable that he could get there. But if he just draws 1 swamp and there's a Blood Moon out, he can't cast any of these double black cards.
That's right. Yeah, it shuts down all of his oubliettes and his Jusums.
Yeah. So I don't know.
So I definitely.
Fisher.
Oh, sorry, JS. Go ahead.
Maybe some Fisher. I really like Fisher to get rid of creatures and land. And maybe.
Well, he doesn't really need Fisher when he has oubliettes and Ashes to Ashes.
Yeah, his stuff is all just cheaper. By the time he gets to 5, he doesn't even have anything that costs 5 in his main board, right?
Well, he's got the Pyrotechnics there in the middle.
It's 1 to 4. Oh yeah, I guess at the top of the curve, he's got a couple of burn spells to finish them. And I really do like Urg Raiders better than Witches in this deck because of the 3.
Okay, I got it, guys. I got it.
I love Witches. I think Witches.
I'm kidding.
It's one of the reasons why I wanted to play Mono Black. And so, over the summer, I tried to make Mono Black work, and I never quite got it there. But, and also, it's funny, Chad had Witches in his deck that he's playing in this tournament.
My original version.
Really well with Living Plane, but it just kind of was a little bit too slow, and I think stretching into that 3rd color made the deck a lot less consistent. So he just ended on green-red. But Witches is a great card.
But maybe the one card because since he's working on getting early damage, and maybe you talked about the bloodlust, maybe strategy, maybe some playing a falling star at least
Yeah,
one.
that's what I was thinking, right? I'm looking at those two pyrotechnics and I'm going, those would be better as falling stars because all he wants to do is clear the way of weenies or do some extra damage to take out a big guy. So if he attacks and they block with, Erg Raiders or Juice them, he can finish him off with the falling star. If they've got,
Or you can just falling star first, and even if it doesn't kill the stuff, it taps it.
there you go.
And gets it
That's
out of the way.
exactly right.
Swing.
And so,
I've lost some games to that too. They just tap down all your big dudes
Yeah.
and then swing right on by.
right. So I'm looking at those pyrotechnics right now, and I'm thinking those need to come out. They may, it might be okay to sideboard those, but I'd much rather prefer to see falling stars there than those pyrotechnics because you're trying to get your opponent dead before you get to 5 mana.
But a very cool deck, strong build.
Super cool. Yeah, so tweaks we would make, I would recommend getting rid of the pyrotechnics and swapping them out for falling stars. I would like to see 2 more basic islands, frankly, so that he can survive Blood Moon more, and I would like to see the 4 active volcanoes in the sideboard.
And 4 witches.
or sorry, not active volcanoes. The flash floods. I'd like to see the 4 flash floods so that if he does get Blood Moon, he can get rid of those.
Yeah.
I don't think
that's a
he
good
needs
point.
the relic barriers at all. I think it would be interesting to see maybe a couple of artifact blasts instead.
But that's what I was looking. He's not running a lot of artifact. Maybe playing Shatterstorm.
That's true. He's only got the Felwar Stones as
And
his
he's playing
artifacts.
other artifact sideboard, so maybe could play just one Shatterstorm, maybe side of main deck.
Yeah, I do.
Someone
I do
playing
like the
or-
Felwar Stones because he can get a turn 3 Serendib.
Yeah.
He can get a turn 3 Serendib. He can get a turn 3 Juzum. Any of those are good.
Maybe it's always a hit or miss when you're trying something like that.
Yeah, but hats off to Isaaco for this fantastic red, black, and blue deck. Really cool, and it's really awesome to see him being a new player and getting into the top
Awesome
8
job.
quarterfinals. All right, so we've covered Lucas versus Isaaco, and now we're going to get into Tim Kincaid versus Peter Soltesz. Now, Peter is the reigning, what we call him, King Suleiman of Four Horsemen. He's won more Four Horsemen finals than any other player. He's extremely diligent about his deck synergies and builds. I think he probably puts in more time than any other players. He's brewed some really fancy and very powerful and difficult stuff to beat. I think he's won 7 tournaments out of our, we're on 15 now, so half. Now, Tim Kincaid is brand new to the format. He's only played in 2 events, and in his second event, he won first place. That was tournament 14, our last tournament.
I think it was his first event, wasn't it?
I think so.
Oh, was it
And
his
then
first event?
And then this was him defending his title. So he was new in T14 and he won. He beat me in the finals, and then I modified my deck to make that not happen again. But I didn't play him this time.
Wow.
And it's funny because Tim actually is not playing anything close to the deck he played last tournament. He changed it up. So we'll see that in a minute here when we see the deck.
He's a well-known player. Next point. He's a very good player.
Yeah, he's played in a lot of other old school formats. Super skilled, and he's also a super nice guy, very friendly. It's great to play against him, and it's just interesting that because of the way the top 16 fell and the points, Peter and Tim were actually in the same group pod. They were in the group pod together, and Peter beat Tim in that match 2-1, I think, and then both of the guys made it to top 16, and now they're paired up again to play here in the top 8 quarterfinals.
Gonna be an epic matchup.
That's going to be an epic matchup. I mean, all these matches are going to be fantastic. Like, these decks
for
are
sure.
just crazy good.
I'm saying that because when Peter asked me who won the last tournament, I said, Tim Kincaid. He said, okay, I'm gonna be prepared next one. So that's cool. Because,
let's get into the decks of Tim Kincaid versus Peter Soltesz. Okay, so Tim Kincaid, Drop of Dark Heart Abyss is what I named this deck. And wow, this deck is killer. I mean, this is just a powerhouse when you look through it. I really appreciate Tim's deck photo, by the way. When you do the wide and long view photo, when you lay your cards out like this, it really lets me zoom in on the cards so you can see them better. So for everyone out there, if you want to know how to make a great deck photo, this is it.
Yeah.
All right, so take it away, guys. Who wants to start? What do you think of this brew?
So in T14, Tim played a very enchantment-heavy black-white control deck that had like 2 creatures in it, and it was just stacked with enchantments.
Mm-hmm.
Funny enough, this looks a lot more like my T14 deck than Tim's T14 deck. It plays a lot of the same cards, but he has opted to spin it into a more controlling brew by adding green and adding a dab of black. And so he's playing the blue robots, and he's, playing the 4 spikes, and he's playing all these one-ofs over here, that everybody else is playing, the factory and the workshop and the ivory tower and the mirror and all of that. But he's also getting, the critical cards like library. He's playing Darkheart is crazy in this tournament. I think there's 7 or 8 decks running Darkheart for whatever reason. He's got the Desert Twisters for kind of a stopgap out against anything. And he's got the Abyss, which is super powerful. So, he's definitely still leaning into control, but he has a few more win cons here than perhaps he did in his last deck. And of course, he's got the Trike Coffin combo, so that he can just keep throwing the Trike in the Coffin over and over and over until it's massive, and then just beat in with it. And that's also kind of nice with Drop of Honey, right? Because he can just Coffin his Trike and toss a Drop of Honey out there and let it kill everything, and then let the Trike out. If it's late game. Although I imagine he's probably playing those early game until he can get his Abyss. Once his Abyss is out, he doesn't need really the drops anymore.
What do you think, JS?
To be honest, man, it's very impressive. It seems to be well balanced. I really like the Transmute artifact. One Living Plane, I was a bit surprised, but I think maybe it's just, something just to get the total control at the end.
What's the point of the Skull of Worm here? Am I just missing it?
The Skull of Worm is in particular to get back Drop of Honey.
But if you get that deep into the game, you've already got 4 Drop of Honeys. Like, do you really need to is he not in control of the game by then already? Like, maybe not. Maybe you can just get back Drop of Honey over and over and over.
Maybe Sylvan.
But I don't know. It's just so slow that it seems like this deck would already be winning by then. Maybe not, though.
Well, I mean, Drop of Honey falls off, and, the ability to, if you don't have one in your hand and they drop down another creature, all right, you take a couple more points of damage, and then you get the Drop of Honey back the next turn. It's just crushing. It's an unbelievable combo.
It's pretty impressive. I just think it might be overkill. But yeah, I mean, it does allow you to play the drops really liberally. Like, you can even use them as spot removal to kill one guy if you think you're going to be getting them back and playing them again. But, like, he's also got Flood, and he's also got Abyss, and he's also got Coffin. Like, he's got quite a few ways to deal with But I guess, we did see some powerful aggro decks in this tournament, and you need to survive that early game.
I think you're right, man. And we've seen Christopher, and I don't remember the other guy. I was playing in my pod. He was playing a mono black, and there was a couple of aggro deck, but he's gonna control the board for sure with all these cards. And he need to drop this Tri-Scafter, and it's gonna be he can mirror universe and switch and kill with the tries. But I agree. The School of Form, it's not, I think, necessarily very necessary in that deck.
Maybe I guess it's also redundancy for Abyss itself if they happen to have an enchant world to get rid of it, so you can get it back. But I don't know. It just seems there's a lot of answers in this deck already.
Yeah, living planes. I think Timmy, he know what he's doing, so I guess it's worked well.
So I guess the question is, so like against this deck, if you go up against a deck that has artifact removal, so if you play against green or white, which I don't know, a lot of decks don't necessarily have it or have enough of it. It's one of those things where he like only has a few win conditions, and if you can remove those, I don't actually know how he wins with this deck. Like there's no other, I guess he could deck them. He does have a Felden's Cane in his sideboard. But it's interesting. Like I think that this is a deck that could potentially play some really, really long games.
Yeah.
And then still not win at the end of the long game.
He's playing just one Cyclone sideboard.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm going to be interested to see Peter's deck to see like the matchup here.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the overall synergy and compilation of this deck, all the pieces are here. That is what Tim has going on. He's got life gain from Ivory Tower. He's got life gain from Dark Heart of the Wood, even though it's a one-off. He's got anti-creature
crumble,
everything, right? Yep. He's got double crumble to fight off any pesky artifacts. He's got double Desert Twister to get rid of any other permanents, enchant worlds or otherwise. And he's got the Triskelions, which can survive through the Abyss. The one-off recall.
Is that a living plane down there?
That's a living plane. Yeah, he's got a single solitary living plane.
Okay,
proxy.
So there's another win con in there that I was missing then.
Yeah.
So there is a living plane that he can get later on.
Right.
And he has another one in the sideboard and one Triskelion sideboard too.
Yeah, he's got the 3 Triskelions main and one in the sideboard. He's got the one-off recall. He's got the Skull of Arm, which we talked about, to recycle Drop of Honey. And he's got things like Maze of Ith, Workshop, Factory, Strip Mine, and he mainboarded the island of Whack Whack for any flyers. So, and the double Tanos Coffin, right? He's got that, which can also parlay into the Triskelion Tanos Coffin combo.
That's crazy.
It's got everything in it. Now, what I do think he would possibly struggle with is if he doesn't get a Drop of Honey early or a Flood early, he could possibly stumble a little bit, but he's going to draw into those eventually. He doesn't have any enchant creatures, right? He's not running Demonic Torment or Gaseous Form or Imprison or any of that stuff, so he's really leaning in and relying on the Drop of Honey in the Abyss to get him through the early game.
Yep.
Sideboard-wise, it's interesting he's got the Remove Souls in sideboard.
Yep.
An extra Crumble, a couple of Flash Floods, the one Felden's Cane, the 2 Sandstorms. He's got Sandstorms in there in case.
Yeah, Sandstorm. I wasn't sure it was a two-wording dervish.
Yes, he must have heard through the grapevine, or maybe it's because he's running Living Plane, and he wanted to be able to, like, if his opponent knows he's on Living Plane or they're on Living Plane, like I am, that Sandstorm could be brutal. It's really kind of interesting that he's running those double Sandstorms in the sideboard, because He's only running one living plane, so maybe it's if you're running small weenies like white weenie, but I've never seen that double sandstorm in a sideboard when you're only running one living plane main deck. Quite curious. He does have an extra
really
living
cool
plane.
It just doesn't kill a whole lot. I mean, certainly, like you said, you could try to surprise them. I mean, I feel like Peter kind of pioneered that play in this format earlier on.
Yeah.
When he made his first living plane deck, he was playing 4 Sandstorms mainboard, and he was really.
But he was also like running 4 living plane, and that was the whole strategy.
Yeah, it was a dedicated strategy.
Yeah. There is an extra living plane in the upper right there, along with the Dancing Mini and Triskelion. So he does have an extra living plane, along with the Desert Twister and
Dance of Mani too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
well, maybe Sandstorm will catch on. I've got some Sandstorm promo cards in the pipeline.
Ooh, cool. All right, well, that is Tim Kincaid's Drop of Dark Heart Abyss. Fantastic deck from our Tournament 14 champion. And Tim is going to be facing off with Peter, and now we're going to take a look at Peter's deck. Peter Soltesz, Peter the King Suleiman Soltesz. He specifically wanted me to update the graphics, and I did that. He wants his deck to be called Dark Forest Engine. What do you guys think of this brew?
As usual, it's fantastic. We talked about it, we chat about this deck, and it's like could say, two ways. Is first he goes super slow, taking his time, and he's gonna land tax and sack all his forests, gain life, and he's gonna strike back after. It's a very brilliant way to play this deck, and 3 Sylvan, 4 Arnhem, 2 Falling Star, 2 Disharmony. I think it's very cool. I always like this surprise spicy card. I know that you like it too, huh, John? Chad?
The Disharmony. Oh yeah, that card is so sneaky.
Yeah, 1 Inferno. I think it's well balanced. It's gonna have all the answer you can ramp with the Elf of Deep Shadow at the beginning.
Yeah, and early on during the spring, Peter, John, and I were talking about a deck idea that I came up with, which I called Suchi Spank Inferno. There's an episode of the British comedy called Coupling from the 90s. It was like the 90s version of Friends for the British. And there's an episode where one of the main characters, his girlfriend, catches him with some porn, and it's a VHS video, and it was called Lesbian Spank Inferno. Lesbian Spank Inferno was the name of the, of course it wasn't written on the VHS tape. It was like a blank tape with nothing on it, but his girlfriend pops it in, and he ends up seeing this crazy Lesbian Spank Inferno scene. And apparently this is a real porn video. It's not like made up. And so when I was trying to name the deck, I came up with Suchi Inferno, and it reminded me of that episode of Coupling. And so we renamed it. I told Peter about it, and we renamed the deck to Suchi Spank Inferno. I tried to build that deck, and it just didn't work quite as well as I wanted it to, but it was a combo deck between Suchi, Stormseeker, and Inferno. And, Suchi, when it dies, gives you 4 mana, and it's a real drawback in Four Horsemen because the only thing you can pump it into is your one-off, Jaloom Tome or your one-off, Factory. So it can really mana burn you. But if you have Stormseeker or you have Inferno, it can combo from that. And so, it's interesting that in Peter's deck here, he's running Suchi, and he's got that one-off Inferno.
Yeah. And his strategy. I remember now. His strategy is to look like a Negro deck at the beginning, and turn it the complete other side in the mid-range game.
Yeah. This deck completely transforms, right? And then the late game, once he gets Dark Heart of the Wood down, And he's gotten all his forests in play. Let's see, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4. He's got 6 forests and 4 taigas. So he has 10 green mana. That will be 30 life. He can gain 30 life if he gets all of his forests and taigas out. And then he can recycle them all with his Felden's Cane and gain again.
Because what is smart is all cards that we've seen, and especially red and green. It's the color that we've seen a lot.
Right.
But splashing a bit of white with land tax, and the way he's gonna use his deck and play it, it's very smart.
Yeah. What do you think, John?
I think Peter continues to build decks without Triskelion in them that are pretty good.
Yeah. So JS, you've watched a lot of our videos, right? Like, one of the things we've talked about is, does Triskelion need to be restricted? And one of the points John has made over and over, and he's like, well, Peter keeps winning, the majority of these tournaments, and he doesn't have Triskelion in any of his winning decks.
See, that's a good point.
It's hard to argue with that argument, right? Like, okay, well, if it's not crushing and dominating.
The red deck we looked at earlier, where there's like 2 and 3 copies of a whole bunch of cards instead of 4. But it seems slightly more targeted here, towards his overall strategy. And I do certainly like the land tax Dark Heart combo, which this is not the only deck in this tournament to play it, but it's pretty strong and it's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, this is the second deck we've seen Dark Heart of the Wood in, and we didn't comment about this earlier, but we mentioned it before we got the video started, and that is, we had 36 players and we had a bunch of drops. 7 out of the 26 decks that we got the photos for, or the 36 decks that we had the photos for, 7 of them had Dark Heart of the Wood in them, and we did the math, and it's like 25% of the decks were running Dark Heart of the Wood, when it hasn't really been that popular in any of the previous tournaments.
Well, it continues to show how strangely life gain seems to be good in Four Horsemen. I don't think life gain is particularly good in most old school formats.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
and it's cool to see Suchi played. As you told, as you said, Chad, it's not a card that we've seen a lot of play because of the mana burn, but it's cool to see them played and use as he's using them.
Yeah, he's got. Well, he only has the one instant though. Like, he's not running Stormseeker, so he's not running other things that he can dump the Suchi mana into if he gets.
No, but he's only got 3 Suchis. I mean, he's kind of using it as a beater. But I do want to see a game. I would love to see a game where he uses his Scavenger Folk to blow up his own Suchi to get the extra mana to then burn out and wrath the board, and then untap and just play a bunch of stuff and be like, haha, I win.
Well, and if he has Rook Egg in play when he pulls off that combo, he'll have the 4/4 flying Rook token after having cleared the board. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on here. It's just kind of crazy that it's red, green, black, white. It's 4 out of 5 colors, and I'm wondering why the dark elves? Why the elves of deep shadow?
For black mana, maybe.
That's the only reason. He's got City of Brass. He's not running Bayou. Why not just run a couple of swamps that you can fetch with your land tax?
That's a good question.
He's also not running. Oh, he is running a 1 of Pendlehaven. So he's got the 1 of Pendlehaven. So I guess if you get a first turn elves, it complements the first turn, Curd Ape and Scavenger Folk. The early aggro.
And the thing I was thinking or wondering if he's playing against a Negro deck as you played with Chris or mono black or something like that, something super quick. Is it harder for him, or that's he had a lot of solution and a lot of one drop creatures, but is it enough to handle?
Well,
I don't know.
if he comes up against mono black, he is running the 4 chain lightnings and the disharmonies and 2 falling stars along with 2 pyrotechnics. So he's got a lot of answers. Plus, the Curd Ape is an unbelievably good answer to all the black weenies. Think about it: Kumbaj witches, or graders. Those guys can't get through the Curd Ape. Only the Hazran Ogress can kill the Curd Ape of the small black aggro creatures. So, plus in his sideboard, he's got 2 Concordant Crossroads, which can deal with Abyss or any other enchant world, and he's got the 4 Whirling Dervish. So he's really doubled down on anti-black.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe more about a flyer deck, with
he doesn't have any flyers.
Ship, ship.
Yeah, you're right. John, you've been running the mono blue robots. What do you think about this deck versus a matchup of your mono blue flyers robots, Blue Skies deck?
I wish I would have gotten to play it. I don't know. He's really he really seems weak to flying, but I mean he has a few tricks. He's got the disharmonies, and I feel like his sideboard is super focused. I love it. And he's certainly got 4 volcanics that could come in against the blue deck.
Yeah. Maybe Gravity Sphere. Maybe Gravity Sphere would.
Yeah, Gravity Sphere was I was thinking about.
Yeah, he's got the double Concordant, and I love Concordant Crossroads. I think it's such a great answer to any of the enchant worlds, particularly the control-y versions. But I think maybe the Gravity Sphere would also be a good option for getting rid of the flyers, because then he can just block them with his Urnums and Suchis. All right.
But as usual, it's super consistent.
Yeah, Peter. I mean, it's hard to critique Peter's decks because they're always so good. So,
well, I also think that this deck is a answer to you saying, "Hey, would you quit playing really super slow, grindy control decks?" And I'm not saying that he can't make a game long with this, because I know that he already has against Tim, but this has like win cons in it and creatures and like burn, and like this is pretty in your face. I mean, in a way it reminds me of your deck that you're running in this tournament, where you have your A plan of your combo, but you certainly have a B plan of just aggroing them out. And this deck could just aggro somebody out potentially.
Yeah, he's gonna draw into what he needs with Sylvan Library. It's interesting he's not running Jaloom Tome. So he's got a lot of cards that he's got at least a couple of Sylvan Libraries and 1 Dark Heart of the Wood and 1 land tax that he's going to end up, just being 4 or 5 dead cards. So I kind of would like to see him at least run 1 Jaloom Tome so he can cycle those extra Sylvans and land taxes out.
I mean, I know he wants triple Sylvan because he wants it every single time early, and it really is the best card in this format, but copies 2 and 3 don't do anything, and I really do think that you're right, that if you can have a book and a Sylvan, suddenly things get real good, because you can just filter off cards you don't need, and you know what's on your library. But what do we know? Peter's won 8 tournaments, so
Yeah, that's one of the only changes, and maybe what I would do is I would just go with 1 Pyrotechnics and put in the 1 Jaloom Tome, and go with that, so I can cycle out some of this stuff. But it's really hard to critique anything beyond that.
Yeah. I think for myself it was maybe just had some Gravity Sphere maybe instead of Crossroads, but it's my personal opinion.
All right.
I mean, if I played him and got a bunch of flyers out, he'd probably just Inferno all of them.
with the one of
City of Blessed Art are incredible, by the way.
Yeah, with the one of I wonder.
You have it if you needed it.
I wonder why he chose to only go with 1 Inferno instead of, maybe 2.
It costs a lot, but yeah, I mean, if I built this deck, there'd probably be 2 in there.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
It's a late game thing. It's a super, super late game thing. It'll be after he's gained a ton of life and, you know, all that.
Maybe you only ever want one. Maybe it's like an amnesia. Like, you only really got to Inferno one time to make it greatly impact the game.
I think the hardest thing to say is who's gonna win this.
Yeah, so we haven't done that. Oh yeah, that reminds me. So let's we need to wrap up each of the deck reviews with who's going to win. So let's do Tim versus Peter right here, and then we'll go back and do the other two. All right, so here's Tim's deck. Drop of Darkheart Abyss. I mean, both these guys are running Darkheart of the Woods. Both of them are gaining life. Both of them have some, you know, pretty cool synergies. JS, let's start with you. Are you voting for Peter to win?
Peter, because he's having more threats, in my opinion.
Well, and he's already beat Tim once, right?
Yeah, but even if I wasn't knowing that, I just seeing the decks and knowing Peter, and Tim decks is super cool, but I think Peter is having more threats and there's burn, there's creatures, there's a lot of ways to, and I think Tim is depending on his Trisk and and a couple other solutions we talk about, so it's gonna be more harder for him maybe to finish the deal,
But now that Tim knows what Peter is playing, what he's on, he's going to be able to adjust his game. So this is going to be an epic battle. I mean, I'm predicting a 3 or 4 hour match. That's what I'm predicting. Because both these guys are running Darkheart of the Woods. Both of them have access to Felden's Cane. Like, I don't even want to record this video because it's going to be miserable to watch. It'll be so long and drawn out. What do you think, John? You going to vote for Tim to win or Peter to win?
I don't know. Looking at well, like you said, they played in the group matches already, and Peter already won, right? So, like, it's not impossible for Tim's deck to win, but I don't know. It's like JS said, Peter's slamming threats, and he's going to be forcing answers continuously, and if he's able to just stick a threat and come in with it, there's a lot higher probability, I think, of him getting to the finish line before Tim really stabilizes.
Yeah.
And gets.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
the Blood Moon.
You could easily see the strategy of Peter just playing one creature and attacking until he plays Drop of Honey. And then the Drop of Honey triggers, and then he plays his second creature, attacking until the next Drop of Honey, right? You can see that playing itself out, where he doesn't even bother putting two creatures down and just attacks with them.
Well, it's interesting because even though Tim has chosen to go the control route again, he has a somewhat odd assortment of colors, at least for the available cards, because he's forgoing all the white cards. He's forgoing Spirit Link. He's forgoing land tax that would be good with his Darkheart. He's forgoing Divine Offering. And then he also, I don't know. I just don't know. It's funny because I've played a ton of blue in this format, and I really like it, and I think it has a lot of answers. But I don't actually know if I like it better in his deck than when he was playing white-black. I mean, he could have played white-black-green, I think, rather than. But then again, I don't know. Like, he made it further. So I played against a white-black-green deck in my pod that I thought was very good, but I was able to lock him out by playing Presence of the Master out of my board, and it would not hurt this deck quite as much as it hurt that deck, I don't think, because he has some other answers that aren't enchantments, but it would still turn off a fair amount of his stuff, like if suddenly he can't play drops and he can't play Abyss, and he can't play his clone. I don't know. It's tough. It's going to be a long match, but I think Peter's favored here.
Slightly, but I think Peter is gonna get that one. But it's gonna be a very interesting matchup. But as you said, Chad, is gonna be a never-ending story.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this: since Peter's won so many games, and Tim knows now what Peter's playing, I think it's just this is probably going to be the grindiest, longest, most epic, Four Horsemen match ever. And I'm just going to go out there and say, Peter's probably going to win, but I'm rooting for Ian, or sorry, for Tim. I'm rooting for Tim, but I'm afraid Peter's going to win. All right.
Yeah, but whatever the result is going to be a too tough guy to beat afterwards.
Yeah.
I also think if you're playing Four Horsemen and you're playing a control deck and you're playing blue and you're not playing Time Elemental, you might be doing it wrong.
Well, there you go. But that's a card that like a lot of players don't really realize how unbelievably lockdown killer control good it is. But yes,
it was really my only defense in a lot of these tournaments. I only made it as far as I did in many of these because of Time Elemental. That card's really good.
So annoying.
Well, there you go.
Maybe it's not good. I don't know.
Note to Tim Kincaid. Work some Time Elementals. I mean, do you really need
I'm just giving him a hard time. His
well,
deck's really good.
But that's valid. Does he really need the 4 spikes? Like, come on, like 4 spike really? Like with the Abyss and the Flood and all the drops of honey, and I think the 4 spike is overkill here. If he just swapped out 3 Time Elementals for those 3 4 spikes, this deck would be dramatically better.
I like 4 spike. I don't know.
I like it too, but like I was running it as a 4 of and running it in a more aggressive, build. I don't know in your Drago control how really good it is. I mean, maybe if he can really stick them good early against an aggro deck, he can counter a Juzum or he can counter even an early Kurdape or something. Maybe it's worth it.
But he's got Drop of Honey and Flood and Abyss to deal with it. He doesn't even need that.
Yeah, it's true. It's
but at the same time, the thing with Time Elemental, it's all over the place when you have it on the board. You always have to keep your
you got to play it. You got to play it late game, and you got to protect it with lots of mana. That's a good point.
It's also not good with his Drop of Honey Abyss plan. So I'm not actually saying that he needs to play it. I just think that it's a good answer to a lot of things.
Well, you can always bounce the Time Elemental back to your hand.
Yeah. Or bounce the Drop of Honey.
Or bounce the Drop of Honey. It could work incredibly eloquently and beautifully with Drop of Honey.
Maybe replace the School of Form by Time Elemental.
I don't know. I just don't think he needs 4 spike when he's got so much enchantment anti-creature hate. He just doesn't need it.
I know you don't want to record this match, but I kind of want to watch it.
well,
I agree.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I'll be able to commit the 3.5 or 4 hours time that it will take.
We'll just let Peter record it, and then we'll play it at 3x when we do the.
Okay. Well, we'll have to tell him to record it. All right, guys, we got to get to the next match. Or this video is going to be like 2-3 hours long. The good news is the next match is me versus Christopher Zach. So,
but just for a prediction, I'll say with Lucas having Blood Moon that.
That's right. That's right. We got to go back to Lucas and Isaac.
I think he's the one who's gonna take it.
Yeah. So Lucas versus Isaaco. So you're voting on this match. You're voting for Lucas.
Yeah, because I was running a 3 or 4 color in my deck as a bit of Isaaco doing, and it's been a disaster when Blood Moon hit the board. So
okay, what do you think, John? What's your vote?
He's got a main board Blood Moon, and he also has a main board Mazavith. And I think if he gets either of those cards early, it's gonna really hamper the other deck's progression, and he might be able to kind of stabilize and start to pick things off or whatever. This deck's incredibly aggressive, and if it's firing on all cylinders, it'll run people over for sure. But I think the red deck does have some answers and does have some fail safes against it if it draws well.
That's fair. In the early turn desert, I mean, he's only got 1 of it, but same as Mazavith, it could also be like if he doesn't have unstable and he drops a desert, like his flying men are just neutralized. So it's only a one of, but that's a thing too. And the chain lightnings, he's got.
Yeah, and those early chain lightnings can pick off flying
Yeah.
men and graders
Right.
and things, and like he's definitely got answers to keep himself alive.
Yeah, yeah, and so it'll be really interesting to see how that breaks down. Okay, so John, you're
Yep.
voting for Lucas as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right. Well, I recorded the match earlier, so I'm gonna I'm gonna abstain from the vote because I recorded the match earlier today. Lucas played it at, get this, Isaac goes in Italy, right, and Lucas is in Melbourne, Australia, or Sydney, Australia, and it was Lucas had got up at 4 a.m. Australia time to play this match at 8 p.m.
Wow.
Italy time.
Shit.
So hats off to Lucas.
Already. You know how it ends.
Yeah. So hats off to Lucas just for getting up at the butt crack of dawn at 4 a.m. to complete the match.
And he's a super cool guy.
Yeah, he's really, really nice, and he's been awesome to spread Four Horsemen, around the Australia continent. We've got like 7 or 8 Australian players now, just simply because of Lucas.
So now I'll hail the king, Chad's third, or...
Well, I'm not
President?
the king. I'm not the king.
No, I'm kidding.
Peter's the king. Peter's the king, but I haven't given up. I've never made it to the finals in any of the Four Horsemen events, and
maybe he's gonna be this time.
maybe it'll be this time. Knock on wood. All right, let's get into these decks. Now, I do have a thumbnail. I have got the thumbnail overview since we did this this match earlier, but I'm playing Living, playing Falling Star, and my opponent, Christopher Zach, is playing Dark Heart of Djinns, another Dark Heart of the Woods deck, running black-green again. So this is like everywhere in this tournament. All right, let's take a look at my deck first. JS, I'll let you start. And John knows a lot about this deck already, and I'll let him comment next. What do you think of this brew?
You know what I'm thinking about. We've play tested a couple times.
Yeah, that's
true. It was a really hard deck to handle. You know, there's 4 living planes, 4 falling star, 4 chain. You have a strong creature and Trisk in that deck. It's incredible. Kurdaif is always good at the beginning, and Earn Jim is always a good card. To be honest, it's as you always doing a consistent deck. I like the 4 Avoid Fate, the 4 Presence of the Master. You know how much I like this card.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of your best brew, to be honest. And there's a lot of solution, and you can manage a lot of different decks, in my opinion.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And this deck evolved quite a bit. The original version, as John mentioned earlier, was black, red, and green, and had Kumbaj Witches and Oubliettes and Ashes to Ashes and other things. But it ended up morphing into red-green, and then almost like a eureka moment, no pun intended. We were thinking about, John and I were doing some testing games, and we were thinking about all these control decks. And I was like, I'm just going to get neutralized by, Demonic Torment and Oubliette and Ashes to Ashes and all the things that I was actually playing in the earlier version, the black, red, green version. And so I took out my couple of extra mountains and forests, and I put in my 4 plateaus to give me access to white. And I already had the City of Brasses, which also give me access to white. And that was like the eureka moment that I was like, I can run Presence of the Master in the sideboard, and it will shut down all these enchantment control decks. Now, I would lose potentially Living Plane and Sylvan Library, but that's okay, because I could still just crush them with all my beaters.
I think it's very well balanced. The thing I was thinking that is maybe run more than one art volcano maybe.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that. So, in the sideboard, Triskelion absolutely destroys my combo. This deck literally cannot face Triskelion because if they get a Triskelion and I haven't been able to fire off my combo, I basically can never play Living Plane. So it stops me from playing Living Plane if their Triskelion has counters because they'll just nuke my lands. So that became like I had to draw a line in the sand, and I knew I needed 4 Presence of the Master in the sideboard, and I knew I needed 4 Artifact Blast to counter Triskelions. The other thing I felt very strongly about was these 4 Avoid Fates, so that I could counter things like Crumble and Divine Offering, or if I don't have the Presence of the Master out yet, and they try to oubliette my Urnum Djinn, I can avoid fate that, you know? So there were basically 12 cards in the sideboard that were absolute musts, and that only left me with the 3 slots. So I figured if I face down mono blue, I'll just have to try and get my combo early between the Falling Star, the Living Plane, the Triskelion, and the Chain Lightning, and I'll have to just deal with it.
Avoid Fate works against Oubliette, does it?
No, it doesn't work against Oubliette, you're right. But it works against Demonic Torment, Imprison.
It's just sorcery.
It works against Spirit Link.
It works against Spirit Link.
This Clockwork Avian number 4 in your sideboard.
Yeah, yeah. Clockwork Avian number 4. Well, he was originally in the deck. I mean, I love the Clockwork Avian, but the other compromise I made in the deck is above the Curd Apes. The 3 crumbles in the main deck are there for very specific reasons. Number 1, for Mishra's Factory. What I found in testing this deck was if someone dropped a Mishra's earlier, I just lost. Period. Boom. Game over. So I have to have access to Crumble to get rid of Factory. Number 2, if opponents have Fellwar Stones and I play Living Plane and get rid of their lands, but I still have my lands, their Fellwar Stones give them access to mana. So I have to be able to get rid of their Fellwar Stones if they have them. So that necessitated me playing more Crumbles than I would, normally want to play. And another card that I found that was just absolutely wrecking my deck was Ivory Tower. And if someone dropped an Ivory Tower early, they would gain so much life that it wouldn't even matter if I blew up their lands because they would slowly just get them all back into play over time. And so Ivory Tower, Fellwar Stone, and Mishra's Factory necessitated me running 3 Crumbles main. And that forced me to only play 1 Jaloom Tome and 1 Sylvan Library. And those were my only extra slots unless I want to take out my Fellwar Stones. And I need those to ramp. So...
And the Crumble also lets you possibly blow up a trike that's out there already to then be able to play your combo, the next turn.
That's a very good point. Yes, that if they do happen to get a trike out, and I haven't played Living Plane yet, I can blow up that trike and they gain the life, but at least I'll be able to get my combo off. So in a matchup where I am going to sideboard in my Presence of the Masters, I'm going to sideboard out my Living Planes in many scenarios. And so if I'm going to sideboard in the 4 Presence of the Master and sideboard out the 4 Living Planes, I'm probably also going to be doubling down on being more aggro. So I would maybe pull out the Jaloom Tome and maybe one of the Fellwar Stones, and I'd put in, that extra Clockwork Avian, and maybe I would pull out a Crumble, and I'd put in a couple of Avoid Fates.
Or you just pull out the library since it's an
I'm sorry, the Sylvan Library has to go too. Yeah, if I'm putting Presence of the Master...
I'd keep the book and pull the library.
Yeah,
Even though the
right.
library's good. And I mean, the library could come down before the Presence of the Master and still be good, but it's also really tough when it's only 1 copy.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and that's what I ended up doing in some of my games. And honestly, the Sylvan Library with the Jaloom Tome is super, super good. But yeah, if I'm putting in Presence of the Master, I'm going to assume I can't play any enchantments. So I would also pull that Sylvan out. And so that extra clockwork is just there to, add more power to the aggro if I'm going with Presence of the Master. But I also have to double down and protect those creatures with the Avoid Fates.
But I think the only thing I will change is maybe one more volcano and replace the Clockwork Avian. That's the only thing.
Yeah, that's fair. And the Felden's Cane is another kind of, raise your eyebrow, suspect question mark. It's only there for matchups against these heavily controlled decks where, if the game runs super, super long, if I can get back my Crumbles and get back, my Chain Lightnings and things like that, the Triskelions, then I can survive the long, grindy control nightmare. So that's why that Felden's Cane is there.
I think there's a very good balance in your deck. And as you said, you can switch between more control to be aggro and protect your stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe the only thing maybe I will maybe add one more Sylvan, but it's because your combo is so important. If you don't, you need some cards, it's gonna help you out for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. The Curd Apes, honestly, are the weakest card in the deck, I believe, right now, because they're only good if I get them early game or if I can have one in play after the Living Plane is played and I have fewer lands, because they're a 2/3 versus the opponent's 1/1 lands. But as I've played this deck, I don't know why, but I almost never get an early Curd Ape. Never. And so I feel like it's the weakest card in the deck.
Maybe just play 3 and add one more Sylvan.
Yeah, maybe so.
But I think the results shows.
Yeah, I think I've done
the potential of that deck.
Yeah, I think I've done better with this deck than any other deck I've played in Four Horsemen so far. And
well, I think it's the most refined and most competitive the deck that you've played, because you're a brewmaster, so you'll post, oh hey, tournament 15 is coming up, and then suddenly you'll be like, here's 6 different decks you could play in this tournament. Yeah, that's cool, but let's pick one of them and play it 100 times and get it really where it needs to be. And you did that with this deck. You put in you and me probably alone played 50 games, getting it right where it needed to be. And I think this deck is fantastic. I think you could easily win this tournament with this deck.
Well, that would be a first.
As the no deck.
All right. Well, I appreciate the comments, guys. Let's take a look at Christopher Zach's Dark Heart of Djinns. I really like this deck. I really do. And there's a lot of cool stuff going on. This is another very aggressive, very focused, very fast. This deck's going to be hitting you starting turn 2 and turn 3 and turn 4. This deck just does not stop. It's got a great mana curve, mana ramp, some awesome cards. What do you guys think of this brew?
Personally, it was one of my favorite I've seen in the deck's photos, pictures.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of green and black deck. I always love these 2 colors together. The only thing running 3 ashes, 2 ashes, it's a lot, I think.
Yeah, but he's got Dark Heart of the Wood to back it up.
Who cares? You don't need life. I mean, that's 15 life. You still got.
got
5 full life to work.
He told me later that he's got 9 forests and 9 swamps, so he's running 18 plus 5, so he's running 23 lands. So he's got 9 forests in there in the 4 bayous to power that life gain off the 4. And he's running 4 Dark Heart of the Woods, not just 1 or 2, but 4 of them.
I mean, 4 Dark Heart of the Woods is a lot of Dark Heart of the Woods. I don't know what you need that many Dark Heart of the Woods for.
Yeah, I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him swap one of those out for a Jaloom Tome.
The rest of the deck's cool though. I mean, I love this one of signed June and Ifrit. That's pretty baller.
Yeah, that is baller. We love that card.
Flying in there. That's a pretty solid card. 3/3 for 3 that flies. I like all these ogresses. I mean, this is he's playing, all the good creatures from the mono black aggro, and then he's supplementing, of course, with green to get, Urnham is another great beater. Then he gets the artifact removal, he gets the card selection, he gets some great sideboard cards out of green. In fact, most of his sideboard is green. What's going on with all these Tormod's crypts in his sideboard?
Yeah.
Just kind of like worried that there's going to be control decks that are cycling all their cards a bunch of times, and he doesn't want that to happen, or what's up there?
I was wondering about that as well, and I should have asked him when I played him, but I'm guessing it's because of cards like All Hallows Eve and potentially other decks that are running Felden's Cane to recycle their stuff. I don't know if Christopher played any practice games. Christopher has played, I think, 3 or 4 Four Horsemen events, so he's not a new Four Horsemen player, but he hasn't played in every event. He kind of ducks in and out, and I know he's looked at the deck photos and all that. So I'm assuming he saw things like Felden's Cane, maybe Dark Heart of the Wood in other people's decks, things like All Hallows Eve, and he's like, hey, I'm going to shut that down.
He could play his own All Hallows Eve and nuke their graveyard.
He really could. I mean, All Hallows Eve.
What is this card at the top of the sideboard that there's 4 of?
Oh, okay. So
that Haunting Wind?
Yeah, that's Haunting Wind. So let's.
Oh, yeah, that's an okay card.
Yeah,
I mean, there's situations where it can be really good, but I don't know that this deck is set up to really monopolize on that. This is kind of one of those decks where I think the main board's really strong, and it's like hard to imagine what you end up taking out to bring in some of these sideboards.
Personally, I would have switched one Ashes to Ashes with one Desert Twister.
Yeah, Ashes to Ashes is so powerful though. Like I like 3 copies of it.
I think 3 is good. The Haunting Wind is a little pricey. It's an enchantment, not an enchant world from Antiquities, and it's a black and 3. And I've got it up on the screen here for the viewers. Whenever an artifact becomes tapped or a player activates an artifact's ability without tap in its activation cost, the Haunting Wind does 1 damage. So it's going to do 1 damage to any artifact that taps or activates. That's what that card does.
Yeah.
There was a match that I played where they played a Haunting Wind on my Ivory Tower, and then they had it was a game against William Kuhn, and he had Relic Barrier, and so he would tap it every turn and do the 2. He'd be pinging me every turn for which was pretty good. It was negating the effect of the tower, negating the life I was gaining. But here, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd like to just see another crumble, right? Like just another crumble, or the almighty Gate to Phyrexia would probably be a better choice.
Oh, dude, that card's so good. Like, we haven't really seen anybody play that yet, but I mean, that card's pretty good.
Yeah, Gate to Phyrexia is something that
especially in this deck where you have a bunch of 2-drops and you may or may not need to get rid of something, like get rid of an Earth Graders or whatever, like, and you can just blow up whatever artifact you want. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, Gate to Phyrexia, number 1, is only 2 black, and you can sacrifice a creature, and that's the activation cost, and destroy target artifact. You can activate only during your upkeep.
I think you could easily replace the 4th Dark Heart of the Wood with a Gate to Phyrexia, and this deck would just be fine.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see the Jaloom Tome. I'd like to see the Jaloom Tome instead of the 3rd or 4th Dark Heart of the Wood, because he's got double Sylvan, and he's never going to need more than 1 Dark Heart of the Wood. So I'd like to see him be able to cycle through those.
Oh, maybe play Greed.
Yeah, Greed is interesting. It's a little pricey, but yeah, that's another way for him to draw. He doesn't have any draw other than the Sylvan Library right now, so I think Jaloom Tome is really what's missing from his deck.
Yeah. Because he lost so many life.
Yeah.
Because he had to draw cards.
The other thing that would absolutely demolish this deck is if he comes up against Abyss. Right? Like, he has no way to deal with the Abyss except for 1 Desert Twister in his sideboard, but he does have the 4 Whirling Dervish, so He's got an out against the Abyss with those Dervish and the Desert Twister. But honestly, I mean, I like Concordant Crossroads way better.
I love Concordant Crossroads. I mean, I would definitely play that in this build.
Yeah.
Even if you just played it in the side.
Yeah. I think the Tormod's Crypts are not needed unless he's playing All Hallows Eve. So, yeah, I think that if I were to be making changes to this deck, I would ditch one of the Dark Hearts and put in a Jaloom Tome. And I don't know about the June and Ifrit. Like, honestly, out of all these cards, that is the weakest creature in this deck. I know it's cool. It's a signed Christopher Rush. And you can tell by...
Well, it flies. It flies.
It does fly.
Here's the thing. I don't love paying upkeep on it, but like it is somehow kind of one extra piece of evasion. Like if they don't have flying, you can maybe get that extra little damage in there.
I would much rather, if he's going to keep a flyer,
in the sideboard, though.
It's vulnerable to Triskelion. It's vulnerable to Chain Lightning. You know, I would much rather see like a one-off Fallen Angel than the June and Ifrit, personally.
Yeah, well, Fallen Angel is a pretty good card, right? I mean,
especially with Dark Riders.
Yeah, but honestly,
also the Biff could be in there too in the main if you.
Yeah, the if Biff could be in the main. I would swap the if Biff if you're gonna make no card changes, but frankly, I would just pull the June and Ifrit out. It's too vulnerable to too many things. Triskelion's everywhere, Chain Lightning's everywhere. It can't survive those, and I think that the upkeep is not worth it.
If they want to cast a Triskelion and waste all their counters to kill my June and Ifrit, go for it. But certainly Chain Lightning is something that just removes it with no effort.
Yeah. I think a couple of All Hallows Eve in the sideboard and the Gate to Phyrexias, a couple of Gate to Phyrexias instead of the Haunting Winds would be interesting. And I don't really think he needs these Tormod's Crypts at all. I would take, all of those out if he's not playing All Hallows Eve.
Well, now that he's played, he knows that. Like when you're a little newer to the meta, he maybe thought that those would be really relevant. They aren't in the current metagame.
Yeah.
And it's Four Whirling Dervish.
Four Whirling Dervish, yeah, it's a great option against the Abyss, but frankly, they're vulnerable too, right? They're 1/1s. They have to be able to build up, and they're double green, where he's got a lot of double black. That could be very hard to get the double color you need. I would rather see Concordant Crossroads and maybe some other cards instead of the Dervish.
But I really like his deck.
Yeah, it's a great deck. Fantastic deck.
But, I'm going to repeat myself. I know you don't agree with me, but I think he's losing a lot of life with Ashes to Ashes, choose Aggro Ogress. This is not tapping the 2 mana. So...
yeah,
it's a lot of
damage. Yeah, you gotta get into the black headspace, JS. Like black.
No, I know. But
only gotta have 1 life left when you win.
If you're playing again a control deck, it could be a hard time.
Okay, now we've all seen this match, so it's not fair for any of us to comment on who's going to win this match. But we're going to leave it up to the viewers. You guys tell us what you think in the comments. Who would win Living Plain Falling Star versus the Dark Heart of the Djinns? And we can go to that brings us to the last match of the top 8 quarterfinals. Terry Philip Hutchins versus John DeProse. Wait a minute. That's not the right deck. There it is. All right. So here's Terry Hutchins' deck. Oh. Am I missing John DePro's deck? Hold on, guys. Hold on. I gotta go grab John DePro's deck. I have it right here. I just didn't put it in the right spot. 1 second.
Oh, good.
John DeProse.
Slide that slide.
Slide that slide in. All right, here he is. I have 2 of Isaacos, and I'm missing John's. Okay, so Terry and John.
But John, it's super good Ashes to Ashes, especially when you play Mirror of Transmutation.
Yeah, well, that too, right? You get yourself a clone, you can swap life. I mean, that's pretty solid. But also, it's really solid. It's a solid card. What it's not good against is robots. Like, it can be kind of frustrating if they've got mostly artifact guys and they just have like one creature with color, and they, you're just staring at that card in your hand and you can't play it. And then eventually you have to kill one of your guys and one of their guys, and it's not always as good, but when it's good, it's great. Like, sometimes you really just wreck somebody's game by removing 2 beaters, and they never really recover.
You're right.
All right, I need to reshare my screen with you guys.
Indeed.
All right, can you guys see that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so back to where we were. Terry, Philip Hutchings versus John DeProse. Now, Terry is a pretty, I guess, experienced Four Horsemen player at this time. He's played in like 4 or 5 of our events, and he's won. I think he's made it to the semifinals a couple times, and he won second place at least once or twice, and came very close to getting first in some of our previous tournaments. So, pretty strong player. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's based in the UK, and he's been a great supporter of the format. And so we're happy to have Terry playing again. This is Terry's Ernum Dibs aggro deck. That is a blue, red, green deck. What do you guys think of this?
It reminds me of some of the deck. It's funny how everything wheels around, because it really reminds me of some of the decks that we saw earlier on that have now been migrated away from, and now maybe it's good again, right? Like, playing all of these aggro styles seem like it would be really powerful, and then these decks started to run up against some serious control decks that they couldn't beat. And then, you had to either move further into control or further into a lower curve aggro. But I don't know. Like, I mean, it's kind of like the green, black, red deck we saw earlier. This deck's pretty in your face. And so if your opponent stumbles, or, if their game plan isn't coming together quite fast enough, you might just run them right over.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a bunch of it. It's just a pile of efficient cards, right? Like, it has all of the most efficient stuff in these colors, and that's it, straight up.
Yeah, and
It's pretty straightforward.
This is an iteration on his Tournament 13 deck. He also played red, blue, green then, and he was playing a few different kind of tweaks and modifications. He's updated it. Plus, I think that was the first time we changed the ban and restricted, so he's had a little more time to see what's going on with the other decks and the meta and things like that. He's got enough. He's got 4 basic islands, so he's hip to the Blood Moon risks. I don't think he needs that basic mountain at all. That could be any other card, like a City of Brass would probably be fine. But it's nice that he's got some basic lands, so he can try to have a maneuver around Blood Moon. He's playing Blood Moon himself in his sideboard, along with a couple of Azure Drakes, 3 active Volcanoes, 4 Artifact Blasts. So he's really leaning into the Artifact Blast, anti-Triskelion, card. A couple Blood Moon, couple Rook Eggs, and a couple Scavenger folks. Yeah, so this is a really great build. He's got the main deck recall as well, so he's really he understands like the importance of being able to get some of these cards back. Like, if he can get back an extra Chain Lightning and Mana Drain or something like that, or Triskelion again, it can make a big difference. It's interesting he's running 3 Pyrotechnics main deck. What do you guys think about that? And the 2 Fishers and only 3 Triskelions main.
Personally, I will maybe put some Falling Star instead of
back to Falling Star again.
Yeah, but it's so important. And now it's a staple card. If you don't have 1 or 2 in your deck, it's gonna maybe be a big difference. But I like the 4 removal. I think it's sure that he can swap it for something interesting in his sideboard. So, but it's sure that for removal is gonna be something. It's not a big mana cost. It's easy to cast.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting card.
Well, he is running 4 Serendip Efreets, the revised error version with the if-biff art.
Yeah,
there
that
in
was
the middle.
that was my question. Just beside the Ernum Gen.
But he's running the 3 main deck boomerangs to try to have some ways around Spirit Link or other enchant creatures as well.
As John said, I think it's all the good cards from the different colors. And for Card Ape, I'm not sure. Maybe because you need to get a Taiga.
Yeah.
And if
or
you don't
Forest.
have a Taiga at the beginning, it's not gonna be the same.
Yeah. Well, he's got the 4 tropical islands, the 4 volcanics, and the 4 taigas that he's got down there in those black and white proxies. So he's got the 12 duels that he needs. You got if you stick a first turn Card Ape, it's going to get in for some damage. And he's really going for damage with the Chain Lightnings, the Pyrotechnics, the Triskelions.
Yeah.
So, I could see why he wants them in here. But yeah, late game they're not going to be great.
I still like them though, because if you're going to try to run something like Remove Soul, like it's really, you kind of have opposing strategies here. Like you're trying to tap out and drop threats, and you don't really want to hold mana up for Remove Soul. But when you have creatures that only cost 1, it makes it a little easier to be able to play a threat, but also leave 2 mana up. Like on turn 3, you could play a Card Ape and also leave 2 mana up for Remove Soul. It's
right.
It's there's some push and pull going on here, because I feel like it's a little top heavy for an aggro deck. There's a lot of 4, 5, and 6 cost cards going on here, quite a few.
And no Fellwar Stone.
No Fellwar Stone, so you're not ramping to anything. But also the no Fellwar Stone is kind of interesting because it makes your deck almost entirely impervious to artifact removal. Because the only thing he has now is Strike. So and if they try to kill that, you can just still use the counters most of the time unless the artifact blasts it.
Because I know that he's not playing any black card, but maybe play some Elves of Deep Shadow.
Yeah, the Elves of Deep Shadow were very
next to the library there. I guess he does have 1 Jalem Tome.
1 Jalem Tome, yeah. Yeah, the Elves of Deep Shadow were really popular in the early decks to try and get, a turn 3 Serendib out or a turn 3 Ernum Gen out, something like that. But he's not running Pendlehaven here either because he doesn't have any other 1/1s.
That's a good point.
Sometimes the Triskelion ends up being a 1/1 after you use its counters, so you could still add a Pendlehaven here, but that's 1 more non-basic land. You got to think about that.
But replace the Mountain that you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
The Pyrotechnics are very expensive, but it is more damage, and it can take out a lot of big creatures. It can't take out the Juzum or the Urnum, but pretty much everything else it can deal with. And you notice he's got the Azure Drakes in his sideboard, so if he comes up against a deck that's got Spirit Links or things like that, he can swap out he can swap out his Serendib Efreets for Azure Drakes and a couple other cards, and that helps him solve that issue.
And Pyrotechnic could be a pain in the ass for a living playing deck.
Yes, yeah, or anything with small weenies or these aggro black decks, right? Getting a 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 could be really brutal. So yeah, I mean, it's a really solid build, and Terry Phillip Hutchings has done very good with it in the tournament, making it all the way to the quarterfinals, top 8 brackets here. So
that's pretty interesting.
So the last deck for the video tonight is John DeProse's deck. This is an Apes and Rooks Lightning deck. The quality of this image was really bad in Teleria, but hopefully you guys can make out the cards. It reminds me a lot of Brian Burrows' Blazing Apes deck minus the Mountain Yetis.
I totally agree. It's very similar to Brian one, and
Yeah.
it remembers the first deck I was playing when I came in the Four Horsemen group.
Yes, in fact, John is pretty new to Four Horsemen, and this deck is the quintessential first attempt at Four Horsemen by like so many players. Right, this has everything that you would normally expect to see if you're just trying out Four Horsemen for the very first time.
I was a bit surprised to see Ernum sideboard.
Yeah, me too. The Ernum in the sideboard is really weird.
Because it's, I think, one of the best creature for sure.
Yeah, you really would want the Ernums in the main deck, and I would play Ernum over Rook Egg, any day.
Over the, when I saw that, because you play 4 Goblins of the Floor, but the Blood Moon are on the sideboard.
Yeah, the Blood Moon is on the sideboard. The Goblins are main deck. I don't think you need those Goblins main deck if you've got Curd Apes and Scavenger Folk and Pixies.
Yep.
So, yeah, you could easily swap out those 4 Goblins of the Farg for 4 Ernums, and this deck would get instantly better.
I think so. And I like when I see 4 Bloodlust, because I think it's an underrated card. It's always good.
It's very good. It's so sneaky, offense, defense. That's probably why he's got the 4 Goblins and the 4 Scavenger and the 4 Curd Apes, because he's really increasing the probability that he can hit you on turn 2 with that Bloodlust and get you for 5 or 6 damage. Yeah.
By Ball Lightning for 11.
Yeah, and then hit you on the turn 3 with the Ball Lightning, and then hit you on turn 4 with a chain and another attack, and it's like game over.
It could go super quick.
It could go very quick.
And he's playing for Argosian, if I'm correct.
What's that?
4 Argosian Pixies.
Yeah, 4 Argothian Pixies, and then the 3 green ones there in the middle are Barbary Apes.
Yeah.
Are they? Does he have apes? Oh, he does in the middle there. Yeah. He's got them.
And they're just a 2/2 for 1 green, 1 colorless, so they're just a little bit better attacker than the Goblins.
That's a cool brew.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a quintessential red-green 4 Horsemen early, and he's made it to top 8 with it, right? He's a new player, and he's got this deck running in the top 8, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it shows that it still could be effective.
Yeah, it's a contender, and in his sideboard, he's got 4 crumbles because he's hip to like all the artifacts and powerful robots and things in the format. He's got the Whirling Dervish for the Abyss.
Yep.
He's got extra Blood Moon and a couple of active volcanoes. So, his other than the 3 Ernum sideboard, I think this deck's got a lot going for it. If I were to make changes, I would swap out the 4 Goblins of the Flarg for 4 Ernums main. And
I agree.
And I don't know about these 3 Barbary Apes. When you got 4 Curd Apes, 4 Scavenger Folk, 4 Triskelions, I don't know that you need more 2/2s. I'd like to see some bigger creatures. I'd like to see Triskelions or Clockwork Aliens in the place of those Barbary Apes.
Maybe some Spitting Slug.
I don't know. I think that this deck wants to stick low to the ground. I mean, I think that this is like the other red deck we looked at, but it fills the gaps of kind of those missing early red creatures by, going into green so that it can get some more 1 and 2 drops. I would keep all of the little guys. I would cut those Rook Eggs, though, because they're just too slow. I would cut the Rook Eggs for 4 Ernums. And then I think otherwise this deck is like you said, it's kind of it's the red-green Arabian aggro that everybody builds when they first play the format, but that doesn't make it, ineffective. I think it was pretty in your face. I think the eggs are the card that's kind of out of place here for this strategy.
Well, but once again, if we go back to, if you tweak some other cards, there are some things that could make this, the Rook combo much, much, much better. I just don't think the Barbary Apes are strong enough.
I agree with John. I think it's a good plan. But he's not having a lot of flyers, though.
Yeah, he doesn't have any flyers other than the rook. The rook.
Like gravity sphere could be.
Yeah, but he doesn't care. He's just attacking. Like, why does it? He doesn't care if they get flyers. Like, the problem is not going to be like if he played against my blue deck. The problem is not going to be that my creatures fly. The problem is going to be that my creatures all have 4 toughness.
Right.
Like, and so like all of a sudden, if I somehow survive the assault, then he just doesn't have anything that can really break the line, which is why it's really important that those rook eggs should be Earnums.
You have to be aggressive always.
Yeah, because if those rook eggs are Earnums, then he's got 4/5s that can, attack, and a Azure Drake or a Clockwork Avian or a Triskelion or Tetravis will still die to it. But, hats off to John DeProse. It's his first time playing. He's made it to top 8, and he's got a classic.
Good job, John.
What was that, JS?
I said, good job, John.
Yeah, good job.
I mean,
John.
it's funny if he won this tournament, if he slid in and was able to win, somebody that has not followed any of the decks or any of the other tournaments and just had a general idea of the format and then looked at this deck, they'd be like, yeah, of course that's the deck. Of course
Right.
that's the best deck.
Right.
Like, because that's, that is a classic archetype.
Yep.
Yeah, it's classic. And hats off to John for making top 8. Okay, well, that covers it for our top 8 quarterfinals decks. And we are hitting on a 2-hour video, almost on the dot. Thanks for joining us, everybody, JS and John.
But I'm gonna just put a $2 on Terry on that one.
Oh yeah. So who would win, Terry versus John DeProse here? So JS, you're voting for Terry.
Definitely faster. He might be able to get in there under the wire, but Terry has some tricks up his sleeve. If he can maybe like counter an early thing and chain an early thing and get an 8, and then the longer the game goes, it's going to start to favor Terry because his threats are bigger and better.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a 3/4 flyer for 3 that's going to be a real wall against that deck, and
Right.
when he starts to play Earnums and he starts to play Trikes,
Mm-hmm.
then it starts to look like it might be over. So it really is going to depend on how fast his deck can come out.
But the 4 remove soul could be interesting.
Yeah, the fact that he's got those goblins in their main deck, if those guys can mountain walk the entire match and he gets to bloodlust a couple of those, and he gets ball lightning and chain lightning damage in, I mean, it could go John's way. But I think the big problem is Serendipity, because that thing comes out on turn 3 and suddenly it's a 3/4 wall, and the only thing that can get through it is the mountain walker or the ball lightning. Yeah,
This is a match I wouldn't mind watching because it's only going to last for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, it'll be real fast, and I predict Terry will win.
It's fun to see all the different decks.
Yeah.
Well,
and we didn't even cover all the other ones. These are only eight out of the.
Like, there's no duplicates.
No duplicates.
Exactly.
Yep, no duplicates at all. And this is only 8 of the decks out of the 20. I think we had 28 total deck photos submitted. So, it's just like I love these decks. These deck photos have been some of the best decks we've seen in all of the Four Horsemen tournaments. So it's been really cool to see them all. All right, everybody, we're going to be signing off for the night. Thank you for joining us. Quick plug for our Four Horsemen Old School Magic tournament number 16. This is going to be our next event. It's running October 18th through the 17th, and we're doing Four Horsemen Singleton. So all of our restricted cards are banned, and every card is a one-of, except for basic lands. So the dual lands are now restricted, and all the power cards that are on the restricted list are going to be out of this particular Spice event, and it should be really, really cool. Looking forward to seeing all the Four Horsemen Singleton decks there. Thanks again for joining us for tournament number 15, top 8 quarterfinals deck reviews, And we're signing off. Everybody have a great night.
Thanks, guys. Take
Bye.
care.